Hey guys, and welcome back for another tutorial. Today we are going to be making a little something for the fur babies in our lives, a paw stocking. Now I'm just going to get straight into the specifics. The pattern will be for free at the blog post, so you can head over there. The link is in the description or the comment section. You can print it out and make your very own paw stocking for your little furry friend. So as always, don't forget to subscribe to see all the holiday tutorials, and let's just get straight into it. Okay, so for the outer fabric, I will be using fleece. I'll be using fleece also for the pad and the toes. I'm only going to be doing it on half of the stocking, so just on the front, but if you want to, you can do the pad and the toes on both sides of the stocking. I'm also using that buffalo check fabric for the trim at the top of the stocking. And then for the lining, I'll just be using a cotton fabric. We will be appliquing on the toes and the pad, so I will show you that very shortly. But it is very simple and easy, and I'm just going to be using my regular sewing machine. If you wanted to use a cover stitch machine, you could of course do that, but it is just as easy with your regular sewing machine. So now I'm just going to place my toes symmetrically on each of the little toes, and then I'm going to place the pad in an appropriate spot, and then I'm just going to pin those into place just so they don't move around. And then I will be sewing around each piece. I'm just going to go to my specialty stitches, and I'm going to look for a stitch similar to this one. So there are a few different options. I'm just going to show you quickly exactly how this one looks. So this one kind of has a row of stitches and then one stitch that kind of goes out. So I'll show you how this looks. This is how this one looks. So you can put the whole thing right on the edge of your fabric to make that little applique stick down nicely. But if not, then you can just make sure that those cross stitches are catching that applique piece. So I'm just going to go ahead and go just around the edge of the whole piece. I am using this new sulky polystar thread. It has a sparkly, I used it in another video. I just love it so much, but it just adds that little bit of sparkle, especially if you're doing an applique piece like this. So I'm just going to go ahead and do all those. So it takes a little bit, but it is nice and relaxing after a while. I'm going to try to speed it up for you so that we can see how the process goes. And you can just see that little bit of sparkle. I think it's so cute. And then I will do each toe. And then I'm done. Okay, so I did all those, of course, off camera because it takes a little bit. Okay, so now we're going to work on the top trim of our stocking. So we have two of these rectangle pieces. We're going to take one and we're going to fold it in half. And with the folded side towards the toes, so the raw edge of the folded rectangle along the raw edges of the stocking, we're just going to place that with that lined up at the very edge, and we're just going to pin those into place, and we're going to do just a basting stitch around this, but we're just going to leave the folded portion open, and we're going to do that for the front and the back of the stocking. So just pinning those into place so they don't shift around. And then we're going to go ahead and do that based stitch. Based stitch just means that we're going to just do a quick stitch. Sometimes people like to bump their machine up to like a 4 or 5. It's just kind of like a tacking stitch. We're doing it about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge so that we don't end up seeing those stitches when we actually finish the product. So it's just to keep this piece from moving around when we go do our next steps. Okay, so once that's finished, if there's any excess hanging over the edge, we're just going to trim that off. And then we can grab our lining pieces and attach those. Okay, so with our 2 pieces of our stocking with the right sides up, we're going to take our lining pieces and lay those on top. If you have a lining fabric that has a right or wrong side, just make sure that your fabrics are right sides together, and I'm going to clip along the top of the stocking. And we're going to get the other lining piece and put that on the other stocking portion. Clipping at the top, and then we'll do a seam right along that edge. When you're doing your seam, you're going to want to do about a 1/2 inch, 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Just want to make sure that you're on the other side of that base stitch and we're not going to see that. So make sure when you do this seam allowance that it is exactly the same on both pieces, just so that your finished product turn out to be the exact same size. So this is how they will look. And now we're going to put them the right sides together. So we're unfolding them and putting them right sides together. And we're just going to line up where the trim is so that it all comes together and looks nice and even. That's the most important part. And then we'll just put clips and pins all the way around it, just to keep everything into place. Now we're going to take a ribbon, or if you wanted to make a fabric tie, and I'm just going to place that in between the layers of the lining, and I'm just going to place that about a 1/2 inch from the seam of those 2 fabrics. Make sure that the folded portion is on the inside. So we are going to be leaving a hole for turning, and we'll leave that in the lining, and we'll leave it about 1 inch away from the top, just in this nice straight section, just so it's easy to close up afterwards. So about a 3 or 4 inch size hole is perfect. And now we will sew all the way around except for that hole. Now the lining isn't as big of a deal with the paws, so I like to do a 1/2 inch seam allowance just so that I can make sure that it lays nicely on the inside of the stocking. But for the outer portion, I'll do a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance and try to be a little bit more meticulous when I am going around those curves of the toes. So it's a little bit bulky when you get along that trim, but nothing that my little beginner machine can't get through. And then I'm slowly going around those curves, and when I get to in between the toes, I will lift up my presser foot and then move my project and then put my presser foot back down and then keep going. Because the fleece is a little bulky, sometimes my machine would just kind of slip right off, so I'd have to reposition and go back, but that's okay. So double back stitch at that hole, because there's going to be a lot of stress on those stitches when you go to flip it, and I'm just going to flip it right sides out. So depending on your fabric, you might need to get out your iron just to make those toes nice and rounded and curved and uniform. I made this out of a upholstery style fabric, and it definitely needed to be ironed. The fleece, not as much. It's not too bad. It could use a press, but not as necessary. But yeah, I think it turned out super cute, and we will be using it for our fur baby this year, who it is actually her first Christmas with us. I mean, she was very, very little for her first Christmas because she was a puppy, But yeah, so if you want to see photos of our puppy, I post over on Instagram. So definitely follow me over on Instagram if you're not already. And of course, Facebook. If you do try any of my projects, I would love to see them. So come over and join the community. And as you can see there, I am just showing you that I am going to close up the hole. I'm just going to do that off camera, a quick top stitch. So thank you so much for watching. And I hope you stay tuned for the future Christmas tutorials. And yeah, everybody's staying safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.